Given that Riot doesn't know how to buff him, I think we're gonna sit here together and we're gonna talk about different ways we could potentially buff Vel'Koz right now. It's time to talk about Vel'Koz design and potential futures. A fair warning, long post ahead. Since his release in early 2014, Vel'Koz has always been a super niche pick with low win rate. After minor rework has been stabilized, but still remained very low impact, and the win rate continued dropping. In this post, I also tried to make a distinction between low impact and weak. He was never a weak champ per se in favorable situations, but he was always low impact. He was decently competitive with proper comp, but completely falls short in solo game. He has high base damage. If his team is winning, he will do well. Higher if his team is losing, he'll do poorly. This type of design funnels into 50% win rate, which I'm saying basically low impact, and fails to create distinction between bad, good, and great players. So that's what we want to do. Some people think, do you want them to reduce the skill ceiling, the skill level? No, I don't want him to reduce the skill ceiling. In fact, I want even more. I want even more distinctions. That's the whole point. People are completely missing the point. The fact that I'm doing well right now, it's more to say about the meta, because I'll always do well in Vel'Koz. Like, it's in the fucking name, Vel, and you know, listen, there's no season in which I will not get Challenger in Vel'Koz. I can always do that. But that's because I play the game a lot. I play the game for a really long time, and I've played competitively, and I know how to climb. Okay, I've been to Korea, I got Challenger in Korea, my first trip. I've been to NA, I got 150 ping Challenger. I got really high win rate right now at US, like rank 100. Is that Vel'Koz broken? No. I'm not climbing through Vel'Koz. I'm climbing through just decent decision making, because I play the game a lot. I think now is the perfect time to discuss the deceased character, as it's extremely alarming. He's below 49% win rate with low pick rate, only mains and one tricks play. Based on the champion design, it should be around 50%. Because it's only played by mains, it should be at 51% even, really. And that would be a kind of balanced approach. 50.5, 51% win rate. That's kind of where you're aiming for. I use this example a lot. If you have champion like Akali, 48%, versus champion like Vel'Koz, 48%. Vel'Koz 48 means he's terrible. Akali 48 means she's might be terrible, but she actually might be totally balanced. Because the champion nature is to be high risk-taking character that completely dashes all the time, and she has incredible potential to be played perfectly. Whereas Vel'Koz does not. He's just low of impact no matter what. You need to create distinctions between good, bad, and like great players. Compounding effect of champion average strength rapidly growing since 2018 is making every season worse for him until he hits a breaking point and becomes unplayable, which is kind of the point it's coming to right now, because I know a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people quit without boycott. A lot of people quit, which I believe we've finally reached. It's just like creeping up, and it's gonna go more and more. Immobile, slow, and reliant on skill shades is unable to be relevant in the current meta, as his projectile and movement speed are equal to that of nearly a decade ago. Ridiculous. I mentioned the flat AP% buffs on skill, which is the worst way to go about it. Okay, so let's get creative about the buffs. How do you buff the character? The reason why flat buffs are bad is because it elevates good and bad players, although now you can justify doing that as well. Right now, this is grounds for even doing this. Flat percent, base value and flat percent. You can even do that. You can justify it because it's really, really bad. That would just boost his win rate. That's it. It's the simplest way, but it's uncreative. So let's talk about the creative ways. Skill expression is extremely necessary, especially in mages. New Aurelion Soul is a perfect example why. Exactly. They made a mistake with New Aurelion Soul. They made it a little bit too easy to entry, a little bit too easy to stack, a little bit too infinitely stacking despite how well you're stacking and playing and surviving the lane, which made the champion giga broken and low elo, but made him perfectly balanced in high elo. And that's why Aurelion Soul got nerfed 6 fucking times. How to increase skill expression through careful design. Okay, so these are game design principles. It's about give and take. People mentioned to me, wouldn't they just buff the auto attack range of Vel'Koz? Wouldn't that make him on par? If you added an extra 25 distance, and so you can match Syndra, you can match Orianna, wouldn't that be better? Yes, but it's also boring. Vel'Koz has been designed perfectly around his auto attacks. He's an artillery mage, but he needs to auto attack to preserve the stacks. Okay, you have Xerath. He can destroy you from long range forever, but if he doesn't auto attack, he runs out of mana. So it's like this perfect balance of playstyle. You're poking, then you gotta walk up and auto attack, right? It's creating vulnerabilities, and that's what you gotta do. If you want to give something, you gotta take something. Lowering base Q damage by n%, increasing the recast damage by 2 times n%, right? So let's say you make his Q damage 90% of the current damage. So you take 10% from here, shuffle it to 20% here, okay? So the easy Q hits are less worthwhile, and then the harder Q hits are more worthwhile. What will happen is lower elo strata will barely move, higher elo player will go up to speed. That's the prediction or the hypothesis, but I feel like it's fairly correct, and we can try this. Punishing easier to lane skill shots while rewarding the more difficult ones, right? right? Execution mechanics are always good because better players will benefit disproportionately from them. Like, a Pyke is a perfect example. Pyke never has, like, some enormous win rate, but he's always a really good champ. That's due to execution, because god gamers of Pyke, like Damon, my bold brother, he can pop off on that champ. He's dominating Korea right now. He's owning, right? Based on distance traveled, you can increase that. Like, not only execution, but also based on distance traveled. You can do that one. Or percent HP on enemies. So the better you poke early on, the more execution you're gonna have later on. Okay, that's another way to increase the gap. All of these are give and take. See, I'm not proposing any of the boring ones. Reset mechanics work for the same exact reason. Again, Pyke example. Hitting multiple W's resetting abilities. Example from McBaze, I yoinked. Getting a takedown increases ultimate duration, whatever, you know, so instead of 2.5, it lasts 3.14 or whatever if you get a kill. More Isaac kit so it can match the standard, increasing projectile speed, making E, which is the worst CC ability in the game, feel easier or more rewarding, right? If it travels longer, it does like a longer knockup or like a root after, or I don't know, if you proc true damage with it, you can have a special effect. You can do many different things. You can just make it non-projectile and increase the speed by 10%. That will also work. Passive stacks interplay to further the skill gap. This would just be brilliant, but this would require a bit more methodical overhaul of the abilities. Giving specific buffs depending on which ability activates the third passive. There are two principles you could do this. If you proc the passive with a certain ability, that ability does its own thing, right? Q would do damage or execution, W would give you movement speed, E would give you root or extra stacks, R would give you execution, whatever, you know, a reset or something, depending on which ability procs the true damage. Now, there's a different principle of passive stack interplay, which is if you proc the passive, your next ability is enhanced, kind of like Rengar, right? You hit 1, 2, 3, and then next ability, whichever one you choose, is buffed. So you gotta choose wisely, but it also allows counterplay because enemy knows for the next 7 seconds you're gonna have that enhanced ability. There's many different ways to approach this. Not a single one of these is gonna equally buff the low and high elo alike. Selective targeting. If your Q hits the same target back to back in 7 seconds, make the second one add 2 stacks. This is like the simplest change ever. Like, if you don't touch any other targets after hitting the first one, hit another one, add 2 stacks instead of 1. It takes a really dumb person to get hit by Q back to back, and it's very difficult to land. Trust me, I play this a lot. So do that, boom, true damage or execution, whatever the fuck. Adds pressure and real consequences to landing multiple difficult skill shots back to back on the same target, lowering base damage while increasing the ratios. Again, one of those simple ideas which is always effective, right? Lower base damage by 10%, increase ratios. That will also nerf support, which people are concerned about, but it will also buff mid lane. So support, who gets less levels, is weaker. Mid lane, who scales faster, is stronger. Again, create distinctions. But I guess Riot has no ideas how to buff him. Let's keep going. Like, thematic buff to fix his scaling in terms of researching targets. Every passive proc adds 1% true damage against the same target, right? That can work. Rewarding landing combos, adding scaling, and countering tanks late game. That's the idea of Vel'Koz in the first place. Research. The more you proc somebody, that will create like real consequences of getting hit early. It will create deliberation attempts of Vel'Koz where to play, because if you're playing into enemy mid laner, you will not have buffs against their AD carry, and if AD carry becomes a problem and you haven't proc true damage a lot about it early game, it will be tougher for you to play late game. So you can choose where you position, and maybe you're gonna shuffle lanes because of it and stuff like that. Never buff flat AP percent. It's like the most boring one. It kind of works, but it's boring. And it also buffs like low elo and high elo pretty much the same. It's not difficult to see this in the game continues. This trend will be unplayable soon if he isn't already. See, like, I was like way ahead of the curve, and I saw the death signs. I'm doing it primarily for the community. I'm doing really fucking well. If they wait too long, the community will be dead. There will be nobody to save, you know? But if we get the change now, it might just work.